All right, man, let's move around the sports world. Interesting conversation. Micah Parsons. We know that he has his podcast, Feel How You Feel About the Podcast. But this week, his guest was Trevon Diggs on his podcast. And as you know, Trevon Diggs had the big media kerfluffle with WFAA reporter Mike Leslie, where Mike Leslie tweeted out something about Trevon Diggs, and Trevon Diggs right after the game, still in full uniform, sees it, comes back out of the locker room, confronts Mike Leslie. They have an exchange of words. Of course, if you haven't been living under the rock, you know that Mike Leslie said, hey, let's talk about it. And Trevon Diggs said, talk about these nuts. That never gets old. Got him. Got him. Trevon Diggs and Mike Leslie has cleared the air. Shout out to the Cowboys media department. I don't think this was on Trevon Diggs, but shout out to the Cowboys media department. They brought the two together, and Trevon Diggs came with the olive branch. He came bearing gifts. He offered Mike Leslie a choice of a can of D's Nuts. No, not his actual nuts, but the company called D's Nuts. He had a ranch flavor and he had a banana pudding, which, by the way, I didn't know they made a banana pudding flavored nuts. Don't know if I would like that flavor of nuts, but I am a fan of banana pudding. So maybe D's Nuts. If you see this and want to send me a can of D's Nuts banana pudding, I'll try them. Try them on there. Hey, by the way, if you want to be a sponsor on this show, D's Nuts, we can have your logo right here in the bottom or up here on the top or up here or down here. D's Nuts all the way. I get to say D's Nuts every single episode if you are a sponsor, D's Nuts. So make sure that D's Nuts, if you're watching this, we would love to have you. We would love to have your nuts on Unfiltered with Jesse Holley. Pair your nuts with my nuts. We'll have a hell of a show. You can clip that and send that to D's Nuts. We might get them as a sponsor. You never know. Let's team up. My nuts and your nuts. Let's go. Let's drop our nuts on this podcast. You know what I'm saying? Let's drop our nuts on this podcast. These nuts. Pause. As long as our nuts don't touch, we're good. And so they had an offering. Mike Leslie apologized. Trevon Diggs apologized, and all is well in that land. But it led to an interesting conversation between the two Cowboys defensive players. And the conversation was about media and how media should treat, especially media that covers the team, how they should treat players and how. And one of the things that I thought about was there is a clear distinction because there are a couple types of media. You have your national media, right? You have your Fox, your FS1s, your ESPNs, your national media, right? Those guys sit in their studios and they get paid the big bucks and all that kind of stuff. And they're reporting on a host of sports through all the sports sphere. And then you have your local media. That's when you have your beat writers and your reporters and your local radio and television and your podcast locally in your city that's more hands-on with the players and the interaction with the players, so on and so forth. And I think then you also have this new age of media, the new type of media, the content creators is what they call it nowadays, on the YouTubes and on the Kicks and on all the different streaming platforms. And these are just people who, in their heart of hearts, they have been lifelong fans. Their daddies has been fans of the team that they covered. And with the advent of YouTube and these other platforms, that these now people who don't have journalism degree, which I'm not saying that you have to have those, aren't working for the big networks, aren't beat writers or journalists or news people, but now they have a platform because you can get a microphone and a laptop off eBay and a camera, and you need a good internet service, and now you got a show. And I'm here for it. Trust me, I feed myself and those around me from a microphone, a laptop, and a camera. But there is a difference in how things are coming about to be portrayed, because I think some of the players now, and there is I've said this many times. You as a fan, you get a chance to watch these gigantic sports figures in personality and in muscle. They like, you see these superhero type figures, big, strong, and they're your favorite athletes, and they can jump high, and they can throw far, and they can hit hard, and they can leap over buildings in a single bound, and they're faster than a locomotive. And one of the things that I think a lot of you miss because you technically aren't around them more than outside of seeing them on social media or seeing them on the TV screen, a lot of fragile egos in professional athletes. A lot of sensitive dudes. A lot. And their entire lives, they've been told just how good they actually are. Rightfully so. Some of them, listen, I sat in those seats one day. Now, you can say what you want, because I know there's some of you like, oh, you wasn't SHIT in the National Football League. As long as you don't leave that I wasn't it in the National Football League. Don't forget that part, okay? All right? I got a chance to do what many would die to do. Okay, and I'm pensioned for it, for life. Got it? Got it. But I also was one of the best college football players in the country. I also was one of the best high school football and basketball players in the country. So I get being told my entire life of just how good I am. And these athletes are no different. But there's a lot of these athletes who have this level of fragile ego and can't really take when the heat's turned on them. And I think sometimes, and this, again, I'm not knocking the people who are doing things now in the content creator space. A lot of good dudes who are doing it and ladies who are doing it. But what happens is you take these fans who are like a real life diehard fans, and then they begin to report on the team. And at times they aren't as objective as they need to be. Now, I'm not saying that you have to have hate bait or hate clickbait or whatever that is, the negative, but I'm saying that you have to be honest and you have to be truthful. And sometimes you have to live in a place where that hopium or that optimism that you live in, this la la land that you live in, may not always be true. And so sometimes players look at that and go, why can't our guys be more like them? And my response to that is because they're not them. I often remind people that when they talk about, oh, Jesse, you know, I hear the way that you talk and man, you're not really a Cowboy fan. And I quickly remind them, I'm not. I am a Cowboy. I'm also very objective. I'm also very opinionated. I also don't want to befriend any of those people in the locker room because I'm going to talk the way that I want to talk, and I'm not trying to have a relationship. Not that that's a good or bad thing, but I'm not bashing anybody. But if you play bad, I'm going to say that you play bad. If you play good, I'm going to praise you and say you play good. But there's no fandom in me. People go, oh, well, you know, Jesse, you're a Tar Heel fan. I'm not. I'm a Tar Heel. There's no fan in me. I did it. That's who I am. That's what I did. And so I'm able to leave fandom to the side and be fair and open about what I see. And I'm not doing it like trying to prop up my favorite team. No, I'm going to be honest. And a lot of times when people don't understand. Now, please do not get me wrong. There are a lot of people who are out here that are here for clickbait, that will say things and do things just for the fact they want to get the engagement because the engagement brings dollars to them. I get it. But there also are another set of group of people who are overly optimistic, delusional, and not real about what's actually happening. Both are true. Both are true. And what players have to realize is the media is not here to be your friend. Because you have nothing to say to them when you do something well and they write that you did well. You don't say nothing then. You're retweeting their tweets and you're retweeting their articles and all that good stuff. And you're playing back when they say this and you're playing back when they say that. But this comes along. It is not the media's job to to protect your feelings because you feel bad about what was said about you. Now, I'm not saying that they should make things up about you. I'm not saying that they should have false narratives about you. But if you play bad and they said you play bad, don't get mad. Play better. Play better. But it's not the media, even the media that is working for your organization. The media's job is to explain to the fans and report to the fans the things that they see from the eyes in which they from the eyes of which they sit. Now, you can work with them, you can have conversations with them, you can help them detail things, right? Like, for example, I get that I get that Trevon was frustrated about what was happening. They just lost a football game. Emotions are running high. But I keep saying Micah. But Trevon is also one of the guys who doesn't want to speak much to people. If you were more forthcoming with speaking to reporters and speaking to media people and explaining to them sometimes how things go, then maybe Mike Leslie would have had a better understanding of what was happening. Instead of you lashing out at that situation, and I'm not saying that Mike Leslie was right. I think Mike Leslie was wrong in what he tweeted. I think what he was trying to get to, he was wrong in what was happening in that particular moment. But if you and Mike Leslie had a man-to-man conversation to the side, and you could have told Mike Leslie, hey, bro, that's wrong. Here's what I was actually doing. Now you don't have this situation, this stain on you. But you reacted, you lashed out because your feelings were hurt. I agree with you. You were right in what you were actually doing. But you got a little emotional because the narrative had been leading up to that game that you were playing a little bit soft. Turning down tackles, not willing to stick your nose in there, really setting the edge. And then actually the one game that in the Niners game, game that Trevon Diggs was actually doing all those things, he got dinged for being, supposedly not hustling on the play, which he was doing the right thing. But there's this misunderstanding, like, and the media, the new age media, the content creators, there are some really, 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 really good ones, man. Shout out to my guy, Okoye. Shout out to my guy, Skywalker. Shout out to Vach. Shout out to Law. Shout out to Boss. Shout out to Jeff Kavanaugh. Shout out to, if I miss you, I'm sorry. Or I don't think you're that good. You pick which one you want it to be. Bobby Bell. There are a lot of good ones out there that are fair, but there's also a bunch out there that is just straight homerism. And that's nasty work. But players have to understand, because eventually a lot of those guys, and you see it, like even like now, like guys are having their own podcasts and being able to have their own narratives. And sometimes what they don't realize is that, you say negative stuff about other people as well. You don't always agree with what other players do. But if they called you out on it, you'd be like, oh man, you gotta be the same way. You're now playing in these waters. Because to have podcasts means you have to have an opinion. I mean, your opinion is not always going to match up with the things of what other people may feel. It means your opinion may not always be right. The things that you see may not be as such. So now that you're swimming in these waters, I don't think players really, all of them have an understanding of what the media job is. The media job is not to protect your feelings, not to disrespect you either. But it ain't to protect your feelings. The media is not your friend. The media is not your personal cheerleader. The media is the media. And they got to do what they got to do to write their stories, whether you agree with their stories or not. You don't want them to write bad things about you? Play well. That's it. Can't write bad stuff if you're playing well. But when you don't play well, you also can't get sensitive about it. Because we live in a day and time now where the eye in the sky don't lie. And everybody, which sometimes I hate, has access to tape. And I know, I get it. As a former player, I get sometimes the players are feeling like, how the hell she or he gonna say I did something wrong, and they don't even know what the hell they watching. They don't know the calls. They don't know the formations. They don't know our checks. They don't know my keys. They don't know any of that. So how the hell can they go out there and have a opinion about a play, and you don't even know what the hell my responsibility is? And sometimes you're absolutely right. But welcome to 2024. And if you don't want people to say negative things about you on the field, don't play negatively. Or you better put together enough good that when you have a bad, they really can't go on your bad because you've produced enough good. So I thought it was an interesting conversation. But we have changed, dynamics have changed in what we are as a media conglomerate. And now the players have to understand that this is just not, it's really not about your feelings. Again, there should be no disrespect towards you, and people shouldn't take personal shots at you. But if they're upset, if they're assessing your game and it was bad, Playboy, you got to just be better.